The Rocket Review is sponsored by Why Not Saloon.
The Rock and Review is on location at the Gibson Garage here in Nashville, and we're catching up with Rock and Roll Hall of Famer, also Grammy Award winner, one of the best-known guitarists in the world, Slash. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you.
And it doesn't hurt either, Slash, to where you have a brand new album that kicked off 5 or 6 weeks ago, #1 on the blues chart. So you're just like conquering all charts now, or what's the plan?
Well, I mean, that's something that they tell me. I haven't actually physically seen that. So. But if that's true, it's awesome. I mean, I would never have expected that.
Well, you know, it's such a great body of work listening to this album and all the songs and also the artists that you included on here. Just a wide spectrum from Billy Gibbons, Chris Stapleton, Demi Lovato. I can't believe the track you did with Iggy Pop. Because I've never heard Iggy sound that way, and I know you guys are friends.
Yeah, well, I mean, the Iggy story is pretty funny only because I had picked all the songs and I figured out who should sing them and all that. And then at some point, my bass player said, you know, I heard that Iggy Pop has always wanted to do a blues recording or a blues thing.
Right.
And it sort of went over my head for a second, but I thought about it later and I was like, you know, that's an interesting concept. So I called Iggy and I said, is this true? And he says, yeah, man, I've never had the opportunity or whatever. And I said, well, if you were going to pick a song, what would you sing? And he said, Awful Dream by Lightning Hopkins. Like really quick, like it's been in the back of his head for years. And I was like, okay, well, let's do it. And he was the only guy that picked his own song for the records. Because everybody else, I had the song already, and then I would think who should sing it. But this was sort of, you know, a different situation. So Iggy and I got together and we sat on stools like this and sort of made it up. You know, he knew the lyrics.
Right.
And if you listen to the original, it's so loose and it's such an outtake kind of a thing that you can't really emulate it. You just sort of get the idea and then go from there. Yeah. But we had a great time doing it, and it was really special for me because I have a long history with Iggy, and he's one of the greatest artists in this business.
Right.
You know, and one of the greatest mentors, and one of the greatest people. And anyway, I can't say enough nice things about him. So to have him in a personal situation like that and to be able to provide him the opportunity to do something that he's not done yet, you know, it was very special.
Well, I mean, all the singles too that rolled out before the album did, and you know, having Billy Gibbons on there, and certainly it seems like, you know, expanding yourself because you're so well known for signature guitar licks and everything that you've done with multiple bands over the years and with other artists, including like Michael Jackson and everything. But this one kind of feels like an evolution from your 2010 album that did so well, Slash. Yeah. You know, to where with this album now, it's like you're really giving a nod to your influences back to, you know, your grandma that turned you onto the blues.
Yeah. Well, this was definitely, there's a lot going on with this particular idea of doing a blues record because back in the 90s, I had a blues band called Slash's Blues Ball, which was a drunken cover band that had some really great songs, and I worked with some great guys, and a couple of which are on this record. Yeah. And I always thought back then, you know, it would be great to record this, but it was such an impromptu, fun thing. We never took it to that level. You know? So, you know, fast forward all these years, and I'm still going out to clubs and sitting in with bar bands and jamming and whatnot. And at some point, I decided, you know, I really think that would be a great idea to make that record, you know, the covers record. So I called up Johnny and Teddy, the guys from the Blues Ball.
Right.
And I said, I got a 3-week break coming up. This is last year with Guns, and I'm going to come to LA. So let's get together. We'll pick some songs from our old set list, and I got a couple ideas for a couple other ones that we haven't done before. Yeah. And we'll do that. So we got in the studio and we just jammed on them, you know. And then the idea of having the different singers sort of came simultaneously with that. And I started getting on the phone and calling different people up. That the first person that came to mind that I thought should sing each song. Yeah. You know? And it came together. You know, you have to make those calls, send those emails or whatever it is. Right. It's a personal thing. And the thing is, the coolest thing about it is that when you pick a song and go, would you be interested? You know innately in your mind that they would be great with that song, but you don't know what their relationship with the song is.
Right.
So when you talk to them, if they react to it, you're halfway there because they're going to put their heart and soul into the performance. And I was really fortunate that I picked the right songs for the right people.
I think you did an amazing job pairing, just like with Brian Johnson and Steven, you know, to where, you know, it's like...
I would never have known. I mean, it was just one of those off the top of my head things, like Brian to do Killing Floor. But I didn't know anything about... It's a great song in and of itself, but it's like, but him doing that... I didn't know anything about Brian's history, though. And I just know him from AC/DC and Geordie, and that's it. So it was sort of a crapshoot, but I called him up and he goes, "Oh my God, that's like my biggest influence. That's like, oh, I used to be in these bands when I was a kid, my son." And I was like, "Oh, this is great." So I went to Florida and he was so into it, and he sang it in the register that Howlin' Wolf would have sang it, and, you know, or did sing it, right? Anyway, and so it was just cool because he was happy as a lark doing that track, you know. And then Steven coming in and blowing on the harp, you know, and it's like two of my biggest heroes, all three of us doing our biggest hero. You know, it was a real full circle moment.
Well, and I got to tell you too, also with the song you did with Demi Lovato, with Papa Was a Rolling Stone, always one of my favorite tracks. And it was like you had in the video cuts from like Soul Train and stuff, like stuff that we grew up with watching. I'm like going, oh my gosh. I
had to call Otis, who is the lone surviving member of the Temptations, to get his permission to use their footage. Wow. That was cool. Well, my mom did clothes for them when I was a kid, so really? I called his daughter, who gave me her dad's phone number, who got, you know. But it was cool doing that song, and we actually played it live for the first time in front of an audience. We've played it twice, last night and the night before, here in Nashville. And it seems to be the crowd pleaser of the set.
Well, and obviously you're going to be back here in Nashville August 14th, you know, in Franklin.
And that's like a real show. These were little impromptu private things. Yeah. But yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Well, you know, and I remember seeing you live with the Snake Pit in Vegas years ago, and you were having a great time.
Yeah, those were the days.
But you know, I think you always bring that energy though with the guitar. And you were talking before we started the interview, even, you know, that you got some special instruments for some of these songs. Yeah. And I enjoyed the final song, the instrumental, that you had to go back and write to add to the album.
Well, you know the whole story.
Yeah, I mean, what a great song.
It was a good call from Mike Klink, because we had such a short amount of time to put all those songs together before we actually had to go in the studio. We had 2 weeks to put them together and a week to record them before I had to leave. Wow. So we're in the literally like 2 or 3 days before pre-production was over, and Mike says, "Well, you know, do you have an original for this?" And I've been paying attention to all those other songs I hadn't thought about. Right. So I said, "Sure." And I went home and I wrote one real quick, and I came back and taught it to the band, and I think it was the last thing that we recorded in the studio, and it was really very spontaneous. We only did like maybe 1 or 2 takes. So.
It's amazing. It sounds like a movie soundtrack. Oh. You know, the way it builds up with the acoustic and then it hits in full. Oh, but there's so many nuances through this whole album. I would be hard pressed to pick a favorite song on here. I mean, do you have a favorite from?
Nah, you know, I mean, whenever you do a record, you try and put as much love into each track, you know, so that you don't have like throwaway tracks that are just there because you need to fill the space. But they're all different from each other, so they have different meaning to me, and you know, then there's obviously different singers doing it, so they all have a certain special.
And some you've worked with before, like Beth Hart.
Beth is awesome. That particular track that she did was especially poignant because when she did it, she'd just flown in from Jeff Beck's memorial, so we were all reeling from that. Right. And when I called Beth about doing Stormy Monday on the phone, she said, "What if we did it in a minor key, which is normally it's in major?" Right. I thought, "Oh, that's a really interesting idea." So we hadn't really rehearsed it yet. And so we went into the studio, we were just gonna run through it real quick before she started singing, and just to sort of get a handle on it. But she was in the booth, so she just started singing. So that was the only take we ever did. Because that was it. She sang, when she was done, she collapsed on the floor. It was like completely emotionally drained. And that was it. She said, "That's all I got." And I was like, we just barely held the band together to get through all those changes in a minor key. Anyway, so it was a special live kind of studio
moving moment. But I think that's what every song on this album too, Slash, is an interpretation. It's not like you're covering the band. I could tell whether you changed keys or whether you sped them up, whether you brought in different instrumentation, especially on Stevie Wonder's song, you know, hearing that done as a guitar intro instead of a keyboard intro is just like, that's genius. But that's also, you know, what you came up with.
Well, I'm really glad that we actually pulled that one off, because that was a song that I loved when Intervisions came out, and I was probably 8 or 9 years old. And my mom and I loved that record. And so, but that particular song, which is sort of like almost a hidden track, it's not like a big popular hit or anything. The way that song went and the story that it told just captivated me. Right. And so when we were doing this record, Blues Ball had originally done another Stevie Wonder song way back in the day. And I thought I still wanted to do a Stevie Wonder song, but let's do this one. And, and all the guys went, that one? And I said, yeah. And Tash says I can sing it. So
I'll tell you what, Tash sounds so good on this album too. The entire band does, and also that you kind of reformed, the Blues Ball again to do this.
Yeah. But we brought in Michael Jerome Moore, who's an amazing drummer, and really sort of pulled this thing together. And,
just amazing. Well, I wanted to bring up also, that you're going to be going on a major tour, but this tour, and you've got so many great artists on here. You got Kingfish, you got Keb Mo, Samantha Fish, but you're going to be helping out, donating to 5 different charities on this tour.
Yeah.
And usually you don't take credit for that, Slash.
Well, it's what I wanted for this tour was, we called it Serpent Tour, which was an acronym for solidarity, equality, engage, restore, respect, and equality and tolerance, which was basically to sort of in the spirit of trying to get togetherness and inclusiveness of people all sort of coming together, and trying to dispel some of this division that's been really prevalent in the last few years. So that's what the whole Serpent thing was about, and to give back to some people that are, a little bit marginalized, people having mental health problems, people having racial inequality issues, and all kinds of stuff, to try and do something, positive. And a blues festival is a great vehicle for that.
Incredible. Well, I'll tell you what, the album is out now, Orgy of the Damned from Slash. You want to catch him on tour. He's coming back here to Nashville August 14th. Catch the tour out on the road, though, and listen to every single one of these tracks. You're going to love them as much as I do. Slash, thanks for coming on the show.
Cheers.
The Rocket Review is sponsored by Why Not Saloon.